Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala Sayyid al-awwaleen wal akhirin. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. My beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, we are continuing on in our understanding of pivotal moments in Islamic history. Generally, people look at history just for information, for facts, for dates, for the names of individuals. But we are looking into history for something else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Surah Yusuf, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, that in their stories there is great wisdom for people of understanding. So there are great lessons we can take from the historical experience that happened with the creation of the universe, with the sending of the prophets, with all of the major events. And especially for us as the last ummah, we take special guidance from the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Because his life was not only the testing ground for the divine revelation, but it's also the blueprint for what would happen in the future, so that people in the future could look at their situation and be able to identify with what Rasulullah ﷺ went through himself. And this is the best of creation. He has reached the highest pinnacle of human life, and those who were with him were the best generation. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best people are in my generation, and then the one that follows them, and then the one that follows them. So what happens to them can happen to us. And when we look at the world today, we are seeing human beings in crisis everywhere. We see oppression starting to rise up in many parts of the world. And for the Muslim Ummah, this is a great time of test. This is ibtila. So this is a trial and a test. It is a fitna that we are going through, and I believe that this is for a reason. And we will see, and we are looking at different points in Islamic history. Inshallah, we will see when times got most difficult, then the opening happened. And so we can reflect to this today with the tragedies that are going on, with the earthquakes, the floods, and with the attacks upon our people. We can relate to this directly. And so we want to look first in our general survey at the life of the Prophet ﷺ himself. So we want to see not just events, but the trends that these events represent. Because they are given to us, the ibrah is the lessons that you learn from something. It's the wisdom that you learn from something. And so when we go back to the Meccan period, remember in the Prophet's life there is the Meccan period, 13 years, there's the Hijrah, and then Medina period. So the Meccan period, when we are counting dates, they will say 7 years after the prophethood. If it's in the Medina period, we're saying, and up until now, after the Hijrah. But in the beginning, it is after the prophethood began. And so this is the 7th year after the prophethood. And at that time, there were 4 significant events that took place within 4 weeks. And this changed everything between the Muslims and the Quraysh. And it brought on reactions from the enemies of Allah. Number 1 was the Islam of Hamza, radiallahu anh. He is the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, and a very powerful person in Quraysh. Allah opened his heart, and he became a Muslim. This, of course, now started to give the believers strength, because as we studied before, the Muslims were living, or they were practicing in Dar al-Arqam. So that was their underground, in a sense, Islamic center. But secondly, after that, was the Islam of Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anh. And this is a famous story that we have touched on to a certain extent. And Umar was another one of the great, powerful individuals. Not only just intelligent, but courageous and physically strong. He was intimidating to people. So when you have Hamza and you had Umar, now you have strength. So this changes things. And Hamza and Umar used to walk in front, and the Muslims could actually walk to the Kaaba, and they could make salat. And this is something that they were not able to do before. And so that is a power shift that is going on. The third point is that when the Quraysh came to the Prophet ﷺ and they bargained with him, offering to give him the leadership of Mecca, to give him the most beautiful woman from Quraysh, wealth, whatever he wanted. And he basically told them that if you put the sun in my right hand, the left, and the moon in the left, I'll never give up the message. So there's no compromise. That ended negotiations in that way. And the fourth point was the fact that Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib, these are the two close tribes of the Prophet ﷺ, they agreed that they would give protection to the Prophet. Now, in tribal society, this is a very serious move because the tribal society is based upon the families, and when one family is attacked and people are killed, the other one will fight them back for the next 50 years. So these two powerful tribes now said, we will protect this man. So he's not by himself anymore. So this is a power shift. And what happens with power shifts, as we see in the world today, we are seeing what is going on. Whenever Muslims stand up, you start to see the powers reacting to them. See, this is how we relate to our history. The Mushrikeen, the polytheists, gathered in Wadi al-Muhasab, and this is a valley in Mecca. They wanted it to be private, so they didn't want to have it in the Nadwa, because the Nadwa is their center, right? And that could be infiltrated. So they went out to a valley. And they decided that they would boycott the Muslims. So they would make a boycott on the Prophet ﷺ and the believers, but they would also boycott Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib. Even though the people of Banu Hashim, basically, they weren't Muslims, but they were on the side or giving protection, and so they decided that they would boycott them. And that translates today to what they call sanctions. So you will see sanctions being put on countries, especially Muslim countries, where they block your economy, they'll take away your money, especially if you have it in their banks. They'll not allow you to travel internationally. So it's sanctions, right? So this is how boycott comes out today. And in these sanctions, they decided that it would come out like no business between all the tribes and the Muslims and these two. No more business. And that's serious, because in Mecca, literally nothing is growing except for a few date palms. So all of their goods are really coming from the outside. And so the Quraysh, what they would do is, because they had the power, they would go outside in the outskirts of Mecca, and they would meet the caravans that are coming in, and they would buy up all the goods. And they would not allow anything to be sold to these two tribes and to the Muslims. They also said no intermarriage, because if you can marry one tribe to another, you can break down differences. No intermarriage. No social relations. This is a sanction now. No social relations with Muslims or with anybody from the Banu Hashim. They even went to the point where they said you shouldn't even talk to them. Don't even talk. So this is a total boycott that they put on it. And so they wrote this agreement on scrolls, like a type of parchment that they make from papyrus thing, and they wrote it. And Barid ibn Amir, one of the Quraysh, he was one of the people who could write. So he wrote down what this muqata'a, what this boycott would be. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, made dua against Barid. And this dua was answered, and his right hand became paralyzed. But the sanctions were on. And this is a terrible thing. And Abu Talib, who now is the de facto leader of this unity, this is a unity of the believers and these two tribes, he decided the best thing for us to do is to leave, to come together. It's like what some people say, circle your wagons. So if we all come together, then we can share our goods, we can take care of each other. If we're separated, we're finished, because there's no social relations, no contact. Okay? So they went into the valley now known as the Valley of Abu Talib, and they set camp. And they stayed in this valley, and the boycott lasted for approximately 3 years. So this is something serious now. And during this time, it was very difficult for the Muslims. The food was running out. Of course, because they're human beings, people find a way to break the sanctions. Even today, the Muslim countries and other countries, they've found ways to break through the sanctions. So there were some individuals who would sneak food into them, and they would find ways to go far off and get a caravan before it even reaches Mecca, and then bring back some goods. So at least they could survive. But it got more and more difficult, to the point where they said that it was so bad that they had anything green at all, you take it and you make soup. And it reached the point where they would take the sandals, somebody's sandals, because it's made from skin, which is, it has some qualities in it. They take the sandals and they boil it and drink it for soup. Now, you realize how hungry you have to be to do something like that? Now think about what we're going through today, right, in many parts of the world. This is the best creations. This is what they went through. And there's a purpose for this. This pain and suffering is for a purpose. And it reached the point where the Prophet ﷺ was reported to get up sometimes in the middle he was so hungry that he was having pains in his abdomen. And he literally had to tie a flat stone onto his stomach. So you tie it real tight so your stomach becomes small. So what they do today is that they go inside a person who has an eating problem and they stitch the stomach on the inside. So they make it like small. So you can't eat any food. Okay, but they had to tie the stone on the stomach, literally, so they wouldn't feel the pains, the gas that comes when you don't eat. Right? And it was so bad that the Prophet ﷺ one time was reported he got up, he just had to walk. So he got up and he walked outside to handle the pain. When he walked outside, he saw Abu Bakr walking. And then he saw Umar walking. So this is leading Sahaba. They couldn't take the pain. And so they walked. And this continued on, but there were people who were connected to Banu Hashim, connected to some of the Muslims. They couldn't take it. We're human beings. I mean, how much more, even the murder and genocide and things we see happening today, right, and the lies that are happening, there's some people who are still human, right? There's some people who say, no, we can't take this anymore. And so they got together and they decided that they would try to break the boycott. And first they were getting goods and giving, but that wasn't enough. So they decided they would go to the Kaaba where the scrolls were. And they would go there, and then they would destroy it to try to break this. So when anybody comes in to the Kaaba, because people normally go to the Kaaba, they couldn't read it anymore. And when they reached there, they found Abu Talib was there, and he informed them that the Prophet ﷺ had a revelation saying that there were termites that were eating the scrolls. And the Quraysh was there and said, challenged them. And so Abu Talib said, okay, we challenge you. If these termites are not eating the scrolls, we leave. But if they do, the boycott's over. And when the Quraysh looked around at the thing, they saw the termites eating the scrolls. So the boycott was lifted. But this had a heavy impact. This is a negative impact now on the Muslims. One of the outcomes of this is that Abu Talib himself got really sick because maybe his constitution couldn't take it. He got really sick. It was 6 months after leaving the valley, and his body started to break down. And the Prophet ﷺ came to him and tried to encourage him to be Muslim, accept Islam. But the reports come that Abu Jahl and others were there, and when the Prophet ﷺ asked him to testify of the oneness of God and the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ, the Quraysh said, you're going to leave your family? You're going to leave your traditions? They played on his ego and his Arab nationalism. And so it appears like he did not take Shahada. He didn't become Muslim. And he passed away. But the Prophet ﷺ said that he would intervene for Abu Talib. But the best he could do is that Abu Talib would be burning in Jahannam. He would get the least punishment of anybody in the fire. And that would be like somebody who is in a pot of boiling water with fire, and it's like boiling your feet up to your ankles, which is horrible, right? But that's the least punishment of anybody in the fire. And so this was a terrible thing. The second point that came as an outcome, of the boycott was that Khadija, radiallahu anha herself, she got really sick. And maybe her constitution couldn't take it. Whatever it was her time. And so she became really sick. And this is 2 months after Abu Talib, passed. And then she died. And so this was a major loss for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Because this was the pillar of his life. This was the first person to embrace Islam. And it's interesting because when they speak about plural marriages, and they talk about polygamy and whatnot, they even try to attack the Prophet ﷺ and say he was a womanizer, right? But if you look at his life, you will see that when he married Khadija, he was 25 and she was 40 years old. She was 40 years old. And in those days, even now, that's not a womanizer. I remember somebody came to me and said, Brother Abdullah, you got to do something. I said, what is it? He said, my son wants to get married. And I said, MashaAllah. He said, no, but he's 25 and the woman's 40. And I said, okay, did you read the seerah that the Prophet ﷺ, actually that's the age of Khadija. Even today, that's something unheard of. Never mind back in those days, okay, when marrying younger women was the norm. And when she passed away now, okay, after these years, he's around, he's in his 50s, he had never remarried again. or before that, he only had one wife. Okay? So this is a person in his 50s. And this is when he begins plural marriage. So this is totally different than the propaganda that goes against him. But in any event, the Prophet ﷺ was really suffering. He was really suffering, at this point, with the effects of this terrible boycott. And this made him begin to look, he wanted to expand his horizons. Because this was a difficult situation. This was really serious. And the Quraysh then, remember, negotiations are now over. So now people are coming out the valley. And they're attacking them, torturing them. And the Prophet ﷺ, he even saw his best friend Abu Bakr. There's one report where Abu Bakr, he wanted to go to Ethiopia. Remember the first hijrah? How he allowed them to go to Al-Habasha. Abu Bakr said, I want to go. But the Prophet ﷺ said, no, you should stay. So that's the pressure that was on the Muslims at that point in time. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, began to expand his horizons. And he looked out to a place called Taif. And if you looked at a map, you would see Mecca, and to the south is the city of Taif. Now, normally people think that the north is like high, and the south, everything goes like that. But that's not how geography goes. It's the same with the Nile Valley. You think that the Nile flows from north to south, but it doesn't. It flows south-north, because the mountains are in the south. Okay. Similarly, Taif is actually in a high area. And if you get a chance to visit Arabia, inshallah, and you've finished your Umrah or your Hajj, whatever, they have ziyarah type of things if you're visiting Arabia. Taif is a beautiful place to go to, especially in the summer. Because Taif is high up, and it's cool, and it rains out. It's got grapes. You're going up in the mountains. And as you go to Taif, I had the opportunity to drive from Mecca and then go up. So you're like going up mountains. And then you reach Taif. And there's a tribe called Banu Thaqif. Banu Thaqif. This is a big tribe. It's a powerful tribe. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, took Zayd ibn Haritha, radiallahu anh, took him along with him, and he went south. So now they're going up. And finally they reached to the area of Taif. It's about 60 kilometers south, but it's going up, so it takes time to go there. When they finally reached Banu Thaqif, they expected to get a good welcome from them. And they started to talk to them, to bring the leaders, to do dawah with them, to call them to Islam. And they actually continued on for about 10 days. And the Banu Thaqif listened. But they met on their own, and they decided that they would oppose the message. And contrary to what the Prophet ﷺ thought, they attacked him. And they sent the urchins out, young hoodlums, the gangsters, street people. They sent them to stone them. And they began to stone the Prophet ﷺ and Zayd, to the point where it is described blood running down his leg and caking up in his sandals. This is serious. This is physical, right? This is real, right? Stones hitting them. And they finally were able to get away from this crowd. They got tired. And they reached the orchards. There were farms and orchards outside of the city. And they reached one of the orchards, and there, the leaders, or the people who owned that property, they were not negative, and they allowed them to rest. And they sent their servant. And their servant's name was Adas. Adas. And he was from a city called Nineveh. Or they would say in Arabic, Nineveh, in Arabic. and that's in Iraq. It's like Babylon, right? So it's there in Iraq. And so he came out and he gave them water, and then he gave them some grapes, and the grapes in Taif are really good. So he came to bring them grapes, and the Prophet ﷺ said, Bismillah, right? And he took the grapes. And Adas, very intelligent young man, he said, this is strange. This is strange. Because the people around here, the Arabs, do not say, in the name of Allah. They talk about, Uzza and Lat and all their gods. They don't do this. Okay, so then the Prophet said, who are you? And he said, I am Adas, and I came from Nineveh. I was captured and brought here as a slave. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is the home of one of my brothers in prophethood, Yunus ibn Metta, alayhi salam. This is Prophet Yunus. Remember Jonah, Yunus, and the whale, right? Okay, so Adas was shocked. And he said, how do you know this? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, because this is one of my brothers in prophethood. And Adas then fell down, wanted to kiss the Prophet's feet, to kiss his hands. Basically taking Shahada. He didn't say it, but he was accepting this at that point. And so this was another opening for the Prophet ﷺ. He's able to do dawah, and you make a connection. And so he leaves. Now, on his way out, as they're going back down, the angels, Jibreel alayhi salam came and said that the angels of the mountains, angels are made from light. They're power forces, right? So the angels of the mountain are ready to destroy the people of Taif. If you say yes, they will destroy these people. And the Prophet ﷺ then said, no, do not destroy them, because amongst them may be people who will bear witness in the oneness of God. To show you again his mercy, and to show you how important the message was even above his physical life. Okay? So then, they continued on, and as they were moving toward Mecca, they came to a deserted area, and the Prophet ﷺ, in one account, said he drew a circle. And he said to Zayd, stand in the middle of that circle. Don't come out. Now, what that means, I don't know. But stay inside the circle. And so he went on to a point, and then he was met with a company of the jinn. And Allah knows best how many. Some say between 7 and 10 these of the jinnis. And the jinn are created from smokeless fire. They are not human beings, but they have a shape. Now, whether they took a human shape, they could take a human form, or they could take their natural form. What is the natural form of the jinni? Allah knows best. But there was a very strange incident that happened in Arabia. And that was, there was a person who was in southeast Arabia, and he was in caves. And the jinn frequent these caves. And this cave was known to have jinn. And so he was, according to his report, he was under an attack. And then he ran, and he threw his camera, and somehow his camera went off, and it took a picture. And later, a group of people came back, and they found his camera. And they showed this picture. Again, Allah knows. But the picture, it looked almost like, aliens, how they draw aliens? They have like sort of long arms, and sort of a long head with eyes. It looks something like an alien or something. Okay, and but I've never heard of anybody else saying what is the natural form that they have, right? So, but in any event, Surah Jinn was revealed. So this is a chapter in the Quran, and it stated clearly that these jinn, they embraced Islam. They accepted the message. So all of the jinn are not evil. There are some of the jinn that are actually good. There are some of the jinn who are believers. Now imagine this now, because they're believing before the Medina period. And the Prophet ﷺ even said that everybody has a qareen. There's a type of jinni that comes around everybody. You can hear voices, it comes around this qareen, and it will whisper things. It's a bad one, right? And it whispers. And then they said, O Messenger of Allah, what about you? Do you have one? It's a good question, right? And he said, yes, I have one too. But my jinni accepted Islam. See the difference? He said, the jinni around me, he's Muslim. And somebody speculated, because the jinn live for long periods of time. Somebody speculated, this jinni who's around the Prophet ﷺ accepted Islam, and he's always around. He is a great scholar. Think about this. He would be a scholar of hadith, tafsir, everything. And some people even speculate there's a company of the jinn that live in Medina. There was a book in Arabic that was out talking about this group. And this one who was the qareen of the Prophet, he is the main scholar. And the good of the jinn come to him to get their lessons. But they are outnumbered by the evil ones. Well, iyadhu billah. So they do not make contact with human beings. They stay away. The evil ones, unfortunately, have legions. And they outnumber the good ones. So these are some of the things that are going on, right? And you know, these are terrible things that are happening during this time. The death of the close people to him, the stoning in Taif. And so this is like a negative, like we're going through negatives now as Muslims, right? Terrible negatives. It's a near genocide happening possibly in Palestine, right in front of our eyes. Okay, earthquakes hitting our countries, right? So this is something going on. We're being tested, we're being put to the test. It's like when you burn metal to make it pure. Because something big is going to happen. That's what if you look at history, and we're going to go through history, you're going to see when these low points happened, right after it, something big happened. Like a victory for the Muslims. Something serious is about to happen. But now, what is our example? This is the low point. It's the low point, you know, of his prophethood. What happens after that? He tries to give dawah to Banu Kalb and Hanifa, Amir. They wouldn't accept Islam. These are people outside of Mecca. Finally, some people started accepting Islam. But they were individuals. So they started to come in, slowly but surely. And then in the 11th year after the prophethood, 11 years. Remember, 13 years is the end, right? So 11 years, then there were meetings, people from the Aus and the Khazraj, tribes of Yathrib, what is now Medina. They expressed a desire to meet the Prophet ﷺ. They wanted to meet him. And they met with him in a valley outside of Mina, because it had to be secret. And they said, you see, the Aus and Khazraj, they're Arab tribes, but in Medina itself, in Yathrib itself, the Jewish tribes, there were 4 Jewish tribes that had settled there. And these tribes said that according to their scriptures and according to their knowledge, a prophet descending from Ibrahim alayhi salam is about to appear. And they naturally expected he would be from the side of Isaac, because all of the other major prophets that are known, or most of them, are coming from that side. So they thought, okay, he must come from us. The description was he would be in a valley that would have lava on 2 sides and would have a lot of water. That's the description of Yathrib. So these Jewish tribes who are normally more north, they're more toward the Sinai Peninsula and northern areas, they settled there in Yathrib, expecting the Prophet, and whenever they got into an argument or a battle with the Aus and the Khazraj, they said, you wait, but one of our people, our Prophet is about to come, and when he comes, we will kill you with him. He's going to lead us. So the Aus and the Khazraj, they had some knowledge of prophethood. That's different than Quraysh, right? So they had some, and they lived with the people of the book. So they had more of a feel for believing in one God. It was not strange to them. Okay? So they met with the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Prophet, sent with them, which is another very key point which we may possibly go over. He sent Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiallahu anhu, one of the great companions, to go back to give da'wah to them. Okay, so this was an opening. There are people who are embracing Islam. See, the scales are shifting now. The lowest point, starvation, insults, murder, torture, the death of your family members, all of these are happening to the best of creation. And then it shifts. Inna ma'al usri yusra. As the Quran says, with difficulty, there is ease. There is ease. And so, following this, in these last stages, 12, what scholars say somewhere between 12 to 16 months before they actually made hijrah. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ was carried to Jerusalem on a winged horse. I want to, before I go to this point, I want to open up the floor for any questions that anybody may have concerning some of the information that has gone on before, because we've covered, a serious amount. Check online to see if there's anybody there, who has any questions. Anybody online, if you have any questions, you can, put it forward at this point.
Someone posted, can you please take this opportunity to show support to the people of Palestine and Gaza and condemn the brutal massacring of innocent people?
Yeah, this is a class dealing with, history, and whatnot. And, one of the important issues that people tend to overlook, because we get all excited and, when things happen, and we should be excited. But as one scholar said, the essence of the struggle today is not based on aradi wa hudud, walakin aqida wa wujud. It is not based on land and borders, but it is based on beliefs and existence. It's an existential struggle. So one of the key things that Muslims have to do is to understand who they are and what Palestine actually represents. Because many people just have slogans, but then they get excited and then they forget about it. Right? This, to understand the pivotal moments here, you will see how this is going to unwind. How we will understand, how serious this situation is. Any other general questions concerning?
Can you go over the verse after hardship comes ease a little bit more, and how can we apply it to our own lives?
Yes, so this is basically, that with difficulty there comes ease. This is sunnatullah. So this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has made in creation. We get pain. In pregnancy, you see pain, and then there's ease. We have pains in our life, and then there's ease. And so this is the mercy of Allah that comes through creation. And, this is what we're seeing now happening in the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Okay? Any other questions are there?
That's it for now.
So now, during this time when it's shifting now, the scales are shifting, right, from this low point. Then somewhere between 12 to 16 months before the Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ was awakened by Jibreel alayhi salam and taken outside, and an animal was there, a winged steed, al-buraq, and he was carried on this winged steed from Mecca to Jerusalem. And Surah Al-Isra, in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. So the verse is saying, glory be to Allah who carried his slave on a night journey from the Masjid al-Haram to the Aqsa Mosque, the furthest mosque. That is the mosque in which it has been blessed around it. Alladhi barakna hawla. So what this verse is saying, that the Palestine area around Masjid al-Aqsa is a blessed area. This is a testimony of the Quran itself. And so the verse continues and said, in order that we would show our signs. Surely Allah is all hearing and all seeing. And this is the Isra and Mi'raj. And if you look at the picture here, to get familiar, because some people get confused, this whole area itself is Masjid al-Aqsa. So some people look at the Golden Dome, and they think that that's the Dome of the Rock, and then to the left, that's Masjid al-Aqsa. Okay, like there's a difference between the two. But no, the whole area is actually Masjid al-Aqsa. And you'll see in Jummah, I prayed Jummah there before, and there were so many people there that the sisters actually prayed at the Dome of the Rock. But the lines went all the way back there, and it filled up the whole, much of the area there. So even if you were in a line, even if you prayed on the other side, and you're inside this complex, that's considered to be Masjid al-Aqsa, because the masjid is not stones and a minaret. That's what people put up. The masjid in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was a very simple place, thatched, no rug on the floor, that like we have. So this whole area there is Masjid al-Aqsa, and you will see to the side of the what is now called Masjid al-Aqsa, there is a place where it is, Hayat Suleiman. This is the wall of Solomon, and you'll see the place where they believe that the Prophet tied the Buraq in that place. Now, on the other side of the wall is the Wailing Wall. So that's where the Yahud wail, and they, do their thing to try to get Masjid al-Aqsa back. But on the inside is the place of the Buraq. Okay, so this is the area. So this is considered to be by Muslims as a blessed area, and the Prophet ﷺ then came in this area, and the prophets were brought to the Prophet in prayer. So he led the prophets in salat. And this is a spiritual thing. It's physical and it's spiritual. But he led them in prayers, which meant he is the imam of the prophets. And that's a very serious thing too. So he is the imam of all the prophets. And he led them in prayers. And he was offered to drink something by Jibreel. So he was offered to drink from a cup with some wine, and he was offered to drink milk. Right? So he chose the milk, and he drank that. And then Jibreel informed him, if you had drunk the wine, your nation would be destroyed. Okay, so at that point, then the Prophet ﷺ he went over to the areas right next to it. And there's a rock there, and from there, he was taken up. Araja. So he went up. And this is what is called Mi'raj. So he went up, is like a type of staircase where he could actually go up and then, transported. And so he went up with Jibreel. It is from this rock. And if you ever get a chance, inshallah, to visit there, and we pray we all can, has anybody visited there before? You have? MashaAllah. If you ever get a chance, go here to this place. Okay, and you will see the dome, you'll see the rock. The actual rock where he went up on the Mi'raj. Okay? And as he went up, he went through different layers in the heavens. And this is something which it's hard for us to actually understand this, but breaking out of the Earth's atmosphere and then going up. So these would be the sama. So these would be like the heavens in a sense. So he went up to one level of the universe and he met Prophet Adam alayhi salam. And the Prophet then, gave him salams and, whatnot. And on the second heaven, he met Yahya. The Prophet Yahya, John the Baptist alayhi salam, he met him there. And then on the third level, he met Yusuf alayhi salam. These are all great, prophets. On the fourth level, he met Idris. So remember, Idris is after Adam. So these prophets are not all from Bani Israel. They're not all the prophets who came after Yaqub. Because this is Idris' before. Right? So he met Idris in the fourth. In the fifth, he met Harun. And then the sixth, Musa. Alayhim as-salam. And in the seventh heaven, he met Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay, and so this is the highest place. And then from there, he went on to Sidratul Muntaha, to the final place and the Lot tree, the area where no human being has ever gone, past that point. And he actually, according to reports, he came into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they asked, what did Allah look like? And he said, it was only light. There was a barrier of light. So he never witnessed the presence of Allah, but light. And some communication came to him. And a number of things. One is that, and Jibreel had to stop, because Jibreel could not even go past this point. Okay? So this is sharaf, this is nobility, of this ummah. And first, we learn from this, the importance of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of, the great Anbiya and who he actually is and who his followers are. Okay? And secondly, Salat was instituted. Before this, there was no 5 Salats. People would just pray when they could, at certain points. And in the details of this, we were first commanded to make 50 salats a day. That's how much we're supposed to be praising Allah, 50 times. And when the Prophet came back down to Musa, then Musa said, no, please go back to your Lord. They're not going to do this. I know us. I know our people. He went back. Then it was changed to 10. Musa said, go back again. Then it was changed to 5, and Musa said, go back again. Now, and for some of us, it's difficult, right? And a lot of people don't even do it, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm too ashamed, I cannot go back. Okay, we accept this. And he was informed by the angel that for people making 5, they will get the blessing of 50 by making the 5. Okay? So the Salat was instituted at this time. These are important aspects. You see, after the down point, these are high points. Because Salat actually empowers us. It gives us strength. Right? It keeps the connection with Allah. So all these things are forms of empowerment. And then he was given visions of the hereafter, of paradise, given visions of hellfire, And so much information, much of it did come down to us in his sayings. And then the Prophet ﷺ returned to Jerusalem, and the Buraq took him back to Mecca. As he was coming back, he saw caravans that were there. And because it's a physical thing, for those who try to say it was a dream. But he actually saw the caravans, and when he reached Mecca, and he informed people about what had happened to him, they said, "You're a liar." And he described the caravans. So he literally described to the Quraysh what the caravans looked like, and they eventually came. Okay? And when they went to Abu Bakr Siddiq and they said that, your friend is saying that he just went from Mecca to Jerusalem in one night and came back. Okay, and Abu Bakr said, that's all? He's in connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. And that's where he got the name As-Siddiq. Right, so it's not just the truthful one, but one who confirms the truth. So these are, very important issues. And this again shows the prophethood and, the importance of this last ummah. And again, that the final point is that we obviously should understand is the importance of Jerusalem. That this is, for us, this is our religion. Like the Quran said, "Alladhi barakna hawlahu." That this area is a blessed area for us. Mashal al-Aqsa, is the third of the Qiblas, to us. This is a holy site. And when the Muslims took over this, property from the Romans, the Khalifa Umar ibn Khattab, he made Jerusalem waqf. He said that this is a trust for all of the Muslims. So therefore, that area is a trust for the Ummah. So what is happening now, the people who are defending Mashal al-Aqsa is under attack. There are people who are, extreme Zionists who are coming in, trying to destroy the whole area and build a temple. And so it is happening right now. And the destruction is going on. So those who are standing up there are actually doing what could be called fard kifaya. And that means that it is something that has to be done. And if nobody does it, the whole ummah is in sin. All Muslims are sinners. And this area is a crucial area for us, and it is part of our faith. So it is an issue that, concerns, all of the Muslims. And we have to, in the best way that we possibly can, first with our dua, then, with our protests, with our tongues, any way we can, to stop the genocide of the Palestinian people that is going on now, and to bring peace, to try to bring peace to this land, ultimately, which is going to benefit everybody on all sides. This is what we have to struggle for, because we are in a very serious situation. We're under a test. And this is leading us toward the signs of the last days. You need to read the signs of the last days, the minor signs, the coming of the Mahdi, the guided one to lead the Ummah, right? Dajjal, the Antichrist, right? About the coming back of Isa alayhi salam. These events are coming into the apocalypse. It's becoming apocalyptic. And all religions, we know this. And we need to know with ilmun nafi', with beneficial knowledge, what is our stance, and what is our position. So I want to open up the floor for any questions anybody has concerning this, the difficulty and then the ease, that actually came. This is one of the high points of the prophethood, where he went to one of the lowest points, and then he went to probably the highest point when he actually came in the divine presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with difficulty, surely there is ease. Floor is open for any questions anybody has concerning this. Yes.
You mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given 50 salah initially, and then it became 5.
Yeah.
Even 5 is still not easy. Can you give us tips on how we can make salat easier for ourselves?
Yeah, the first thing we have to understand how important the salat is. And it is prescribed on us. And, the first thing the person's going to be asked about on the day of judgment is your prayers. That's going to be the first thing. So this is something which is very serious. And people need to take it serious. Muslims, unfortunately, because of our education, we have the wrong priorities. Like some people, fasting in Ramadan, becomes like the most important thing, or eating halal food. It becomes like so important for some people. So they might fast and then miss salat. They may eat halal food, right? And then be involved in other things that are wrong. So the prayer is essential. It is the first manifestation after our shahada and our tawheed of our Islam. Now, floor is open for any questions anyone has.
With the escalation of Palestine into a full-out war now, where does
Yeah.
that put us in terms of relations to the final signs of the end?
Well, as far as the question is with this situation happening now, according to the scholars, the minor signs are basically fulfilled, many of the minor signs. But what has been predicted is a melhama. It is a great war. So there is a great war which is, is about to happen. Whether this particular situation is going to lead to that war or not, Allah knows best. But you can see everything is lining up for it to get closer and closer to a great war that would happen, and with great oppression in the land that is happening. And this is where the Mahdi, comes in. So we're right at that point of the great war and the Mahdi. What comes first, Allah knows best, because it's not necessarily chronologically, set. But we're right, at the border of this now. You can see everything lining up now. Floor is open for any questions anybody has.
In Surah Isra, right?
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saying, right, He destroyed them because they were so haughty and tyrant, right?
Yeah.
He said the same situation will be happening again. It's going to happen twice before the day of judgment, right? They will be destroyed.
Yeah, so the evil forces with them, according to the traditions, will ultimately be defeated in this when Isa comes back. Because when Isa alayhi salam comes, he's from Beni Israel, right? And he's the Messiah that they expected to come. So now when he comes, what are you going to say? What are the Christian evangelists going to say? Because he's here, right? He doesn't have a suit on and a southern accent. But so what are you going to say? So in our traditions, massive wars taking place, and these evil forces, they will be ultimately destroyed. Time, in terms of chronology of time, Allah knows best. We have to have the patience and go through this trial. Our nation is going through a serious trial right now. It's like a trial by fire. It's like burning metal or leather to purify it. Because we have a lot of problems amongst ourselves. We have tribalism, racism, greed, oppression. We allow leaders to rule us who are like terrible people. We fight each other because we're not from the same family. We're doing a lot of wrong. So in a sense, it's like a punishment too. This is what's happening to us. Sorry to be so straightforward, but that's the reality that we're in. And with this, and we're going to look historically at this, that when these, apocalypse things happened, afterwards, the Ummah got straightened out. But it took these major events to straighten us out. And we'll be looking at some of these events at pivotal moments within our history to see, how we can come out of this and what pivotal moments, inshallah, can happen to the believers. Now, any other general questions anybody has? Floor is open. So inshallah, we will continue on with this, and we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal would have mercy upon our people. and would bring, peace, to the land of Palestine, and justice to the Muslims all throughout the world. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. آخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله